Good morning. Hope that your Wednesday is off to a good start. Mine is so far. Man, it's just a beautiful day in the outdoor office. So, this coming Sunday, in case you're not aware, and I assume you are, is Palm Sunday. It is Palm Sunday, and in a lot of churches, have little kids bringing in palm branches, or maybe the whole congregation bringing in palm branches during the first hymn. And this coming Sunday is a great opportunity for us to practice how we read the Bible. We have 4 different events, 4 different descriptions of the same event, and all of them are just a little bit different. And it's okay that they're all a little bit different, because if they weren't, why would we need 4 Gospels? But it's Palm Sunday, and so what I want to do is look at this event as it's described in all 4 Gospels, and just to point out what the differences are, and also what we can read in, sometimes what we read into an event. Okay. So this coming Sunday, I'm going to be reading from Luke's account of the entry into Jerusalem. This is in Luke 19, it's 28 through 40. And when he had said these things, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he drew near to Bethphage and Bethany, at the mount that is called Olivet, he said to his disciples, saying, Go into the village in front of you, where on entering you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever yet sat. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, Why are you untying it? You shall say to them, The Lord has need of it. So those who were sent went away and found it just as he had told them. And as they were untying the colt, the owner said to them, Why are you untying the colt? And they said, The Lord has need of it. And they brought it to Jesus, and throwing their cloaks on the colt, they sat Jesus on it. And as he rode along, they spread their cloaks on the road. As he was drawing near, already in the top of the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of his disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works that they had seen, saying, Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Praise in heaven and glory in the highest. And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. He answered, I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out. And to go one verse further, and when he drew near, he saw the city, he wept over it. So that's Luke's account of what we sometimes call the triumphal entry. Did you notice anything that was missing from Luke's account? You notice anything missing? When you read through the 4 descriptions of this event, I want to look at several things. First, what is not there in any of them, and then what they're putting on the road, and who is there, and what they're saying. So the first thing that you don't see in any of these is any mention of children. I think it's great to have children waving palm branches on Palm Sundays. It's fine, no problem with it. But they're not actually there. They're not actually there in any of the 4. And in case you're wondering, you will find the description of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem in John chapter 12, Mark 11, Matthew 20, and then in Luke chapter 19. But the children aren't there in any of them. Some of the Palm Sunday hymns refer to children, but they're not actually there in the biblical accounts. So what about the term Palm Sunday? When you look at the four accounts, palm branches only mentioned in one of them. Only in John do we read about palm branches. Matthew and Mark have leafy branches and cloaks, and in Luke there are no branches at all. It's just cloaks. So we only had Luke to go on. We wouldn't call it Palm Sunday at all. We'd just call it Cloak Sunday or something. Now, who is there? John is pretty clear that it's a big crowd of people. Matthew and Mark imply that it's a big crowd, but it's not as explicit. And Luke implies that it's just disciples, but probably not just the original 12, the inner circle of 12, but there's a broader number of disciples, which is numbered at 70 or 72. So presumably in Luke, it's this broader number of disciples, but not a big crowd of others. And then, fourth, what are they saying? Did you notice what was missing in what I read from Luke? Luke doesn't have Hosanna for some reason. Matthew, Mark, and John all have the disciples or crowd saying, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And the term Hosanna is a very ancient Hebrew phrase for Lord save us. Luke doesn't have them saying that. Luke just says, blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. So in the last portion of what Luke quotes him as saying really seems to echo some of the praise that we find in Luke chapter 2 at Jesus' birth. So why do I go through this? What's the point of mentioning these differences? It's this: when we read any particular passage of the Bible, particularly one like this that we think we are familiar with, we need to be careful to read what is there. With a passage that we think we know and are familiar with, we need to really be careful to read what is there, not what we think is there. And really the same thing is true with the birth narratives. When we're reading Matthew's account of the birth of Christ, we can't read shepherds into it. And when we're reading Luke's account of the birth, we can't just magically import the Magi so the wise men are there along with the shepherds. Let whatever passage we're reading, let that passage stand on its own and read and interpret what is actually there in front of us. So in my little corner of the kingdom this Sunday, I'll be reading from Luke's account of this triumphal entry, though even triumphal isn't a good phrase to use. I'll be reading from Luke's account, but I won't be mentioning palm branches. And Luke has its own flavor. And let Luke has its own flavor. And for any particular passage that we are reading, and this is really true of the Gospels, let the passage you're reading stand on its own. The Gospel writers are different, and that's good. Matthew writes differently than Mark, who writes differently than John, and that is perfectly fine. But let the Gospel writers stand on their own, stand separately, and that's good. Read Luke and let Luke speak. If you're reading from the feeding of the 5,000, the only miracle that is recorded in all four Gospels, you're reading from John's account, let John's account speak for itself. That's one of the most important things in any biblical interpretation. Read the passage. Let the passage stand on its own. Let that particular gospel writer speak for himself. So, with that, I hope the rest of your Wednesday is really good. And make certain to be in church this coming Sunday and the Sunday after that, which is Easter. Have a great day.